Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another edition of the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. You know what time it is. It is Jeremy Betts here with you to discuss your questions, the Pittsburgh Steelers, anything that we've got tonight. And I wanted to kind of focus in on the Steelers and how they sit, how they're actually viewed in the conference of the AFC. And what we're going to do is we're going to break down the teams that they're going to play specifically in their schedule for 2024. And we're going to kind of just compare how the Steelers set up with the rest of these teams. Now, I don't have a guest with me today. I was on a camping trip and I totally forgot to ask anybody until it was too late. So it's just me, but we're still going to have a lot of fun. Afton's already in here. Jared Devil's already in here. Andre Coleman's already in here. It's going to be fun. Keep on coming in. Get in the live chat. We want to hear from you, talk with you. Again, if you are new to this show, we're going to answer questions. So if you have those, put those in there. While we're doing that, we'll talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and in this situation, the AFC and how the Steelers sit in there. Are they being slept on in a difficult AFC? We'll talk about all of that. After you are exactly right, hit that like button, follow, subscribe, whatever you need to do to get our content whenever we have live shows. And we have live shows just about every day for you here on the Steel Curtain Network YouTube channel. And then you can find our podcasts and these shows as well, wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I don't know, wherever you get them. I don't even know how many places there are these days. iTunes, there's just so many spots to get podcasts. You can do that anywhere. You can also go to our website, steelcurtainnetwork.com, and you can listen to the Megaphone broadcasts of these shows as well on that page. So thank you all for tuning in. We got 31 of you. Let's keep that number going up. Bring a friend, and let's have a good time tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. So while we're waiting on some questions coming in, Brian Brown is in the chat now as well, stopping in for a minute. Gene Smith, I see you, Gene. Thank you all for tuning in. Keep it coming. Let's start by breaking down the Pittsburgh Steelers. After I see your question, we'll get to it here in just a second. Throw that in I'll star that one so we can get back to that one. Let's set this up though first for a little bit. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who they are heading into 2024. I'm going to tell you, I've been looking at the roster and comparing it to some of the other rosters across the league, specifically in the AFC North. And I got to say, the Steelers have maybe more strengths than some of these other teams in the AFC North. The question positions, though, are intriguing. The quarterback, obviously, is the big question. If I'm going to break it down in the AFC North specifically, the Bengals and the Ravens, they don't have quarterback question. If their player's healthy, they've got a top 5 quarterback, and they're going to be in the mix, right? The Steelers and the Browns, their rosters are just as complete as these other teams in the AFC North, maybe even more so if you want to dig into it. We'll see. But they have quarterback questions. They've got a significant question at the quarterback position. And that is where the difference maybe is with some of these. But for the Steelers, let's just break it down for this team specifically. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, quarterback competition. Is there one? Is there not one? That's the question going on right now because Russell Wilson is everywhere. Russell Wilson is the face of the Steelers right now in the city. He's the one who's getting out there at all these events. Zach Brown Band was in town. Guess who's there? Russell Wilson. Kenny Chesney takes a picture with a Steeler. It's not Cam Hayward. It's not TJ Watt. It's Russell Wilson. So he is there in the face of it all. I think that Russell Wilson is the day one starter for 2024. And if the Steelers have their way, he'll be their starter the whole season. And Justin Fields won't sniff the field really other than package football outside of an injury or just a disastrous start to the season. And by disastrous, I mean the Steelers have a losing record by their bye week, and it looks like that they're gonna have their first losing season under Mike Tomlin. I don't think that's gonna happen. So my question is actually less about who's going to start at quarterback and is Russell Wilson able to find more of the spark that he had a few years ago in Seattle? I mentioned this on the Steelers Fix. I did think that Russell Wilson started to take not a nosedive, but he started to he was fading a little bit in Seattle over the last few years. And whether that was schematics or the organization disgruntledness or just the familiarity breeds contempt, I don't know. Being in one place too long, I don't know. But he started to slip a little bit, I thought, from a play perspective when he was asked to do more, asked to do too much. That kind of changed. And I think that that changed from what it was before, where he was running a run-heavy offense. It was big plays down the field, big plays with his legs, clutch plays in the fourth quarter. That's still asking your quarterback to do a lot, but let Russ cook was probably the worst thing for him. And the Steelers don't have to let him cook, right? They've got a running game that can cook. They've got George Pickens who can cook down the field. They've got a bunch of guys who can handle business, and Russell Wilson just kind of needs to be okay, I know exactly where the ball is going. I'm going to make the right decision. I'm going to limit the turnovers, but I'm actually going to increase our chances to score touchdowns and to have big plays because I'm a better quarterback. I'm an experienced quarterback. If he can provide that, the Steelers are just fine on offense. Don't listen to anybody else out there saying, well, Justin Fields, if he could get in there and win this job, Justin Fields has a lot of talent. The Pittsburgh Steelers, though, in 2024 are probably better off with Russell Wilson playing all 17 games as the team starter and as a rejuvenated version of the 2023 Broncos player. I think that is all we need from him. So if that happens, the Steelers, I believe, are in good shape at the quarterback position. Let's talk about the defense. I have concerns in the secondary. I think most of us do, right? The Steelers can still address those, so there's no telling what they do. But I think that this front seven is probably, if they can stay healthy, specifically, if Cam Hayward and TJ Watt stay healthy all year long, Keanu Benton I might throw in there as well. If those three guys stay healthy for the majority of the season, this front seven will be just fine. Patrick Queen and this linebacking core with Queen and Roberts and Cole Holcomb, if he can come back healthy, and Peyton Wilson. I mean, that's a really good group. And then you've got guys like Nick Herbig who can sub package in as an off-ball linebacker if you need him to. You've got three solid edge rushers. You're probably going to add a fourth sometime before that. This front seven is ready to rumble, ladies and gentlemen, and I think that it's going to be maybe the best we've seen in a long time if those guys can stay healthy. And that's going to dictate a lot for the back end. The safety group, I think, is improved. Joey Porter Jr. is going to continue improving, but he's pretty good already, obviously. I talked about that with Jeff on the Let's Ride podcast this last week. Check that out on the Friday episode of that. Who did I think maybe would be the bigger riser this year, Keanu Benton or Joey Porter Jr.? I think Benton has more room to grow. Porter kind of played above expectation already, so I'm going to say, yes, he can improve. He's got areas where he needs to improve, but Keanu Benton to me is the guy who has a shot to really, really take a major leap in 2024. Those guys aside, Dante Jackson, I'm very comfortable with Dante Jackson, personally, if he stays healthy too. This is a lot of if he stays healthy caveats, but trust me, every team is doing this. Every team commentator or whatever analyst is saying is coming with that if caveat if they can stay healthy. So it's nothing new. But the Steelers, I think, have some more high-end pieces that if they stay healthy, they really have a shot to be really good this year. So I'm not saying the Steelers are perfect. I don't want to overhype this team. I don't want to say that they're going to go undefeated, 17-0. That's obviously not going to happen. There's going to be bumps in the road. It's a really tough schedule. But I do think the Steelers are being slept on from a roster perspective. This roster is stacked at the top end when you talk about all-pro edge rusher, all-pro interior defensive lineman, all-pro linebacker, all-pro safety. I mean, that defense is stacked. And then you go to the offensive line, you got a Pro Bowl caliber offensive guard. You've got a true center now in Zach Frazier. You've got two guys who can definitely play tackle. I mean, Troy Fautanu, Broderick Jones, Dan Moore Jr., all the heck that we give him isn't a bad offensive tackle. He's not great. He's replaceable, I guess, but he's not like if he plays 2 games this season, the Steelers are screwed. That is not the case. So the offensive line looks to be really good. Really good tight end room. Wide receiver room, top heavy. You could say that George Pickens and then a bunch of guys, but maybe one of those guys steps up. Maybe they don't need a bunch of guys to step up in the passing game. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. I'm just saying this team has some depth where it counts, offensive and defensive lines, and linebacker now too. They also have some young rising stars that are going to fill in the blanks with the stars that we already know, the names and numbers that we already know. So I'm much higher on this roster than you'll find across maybe even Steelers beat writers and Steelers analysts. I really think this roster is it's a top 10 NFL roster. It really is from top to bottom. So again, there's holes. Every team has holes unless you're the 49ers. And then, they just need Patrick. If the 49ers had Patrick Mahomes on their team, they'd be unstoppable. But that team wouldn't be the same if he was on there anyway. So, Gene, I like you saying Calvin Austin will surprise people this year. I think that's the case as well. So, okay, that's the groundwork for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this team is being slept on. First off, in their own roster, it's been built. It's got some depth where it needs to. It's got some rising stars. It's got some established veteran stars. It's got a quarterback who's been there, done that. It's not like they don't have that now. So I am bullish on this roster. That being said, we'll need to get to the opponents in the AFC. Tough AFC again this year. I'm going to say that there's a lot of tough teams to play. And we'll get to those. Let's go ahead and take our break. When we come back, we'll answer some of the questions that are already in here. And then if you have more, we'll get into those. So keep giving those to me and we'll get to those as well. So let's take our break on the audio side. If you're listening live, you know the drill. We're not going anywhere, but the Steelers Sunday night Q&A will be right back. All right, welcome back to the Steelers Sunday night Q&A. Jeremy Betts here with you, riding solo, but that's okay. Again, I was on a camping trip on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and didn't get a chance to ask anybody to help me this week. So no worries, though. We're going to get this done. It's going to be fun. Okay, there's another question from Gene. Good stuff here. Let's dive into some of these questions. And then as I'm answering these, if you have more, pop them in here. I don't care if you've asked a question already. Just give them all. Let's get to them. Right now I've got 3. So we'll get to those 3. And then if we have some more, we'll get to those. If not, then we'll move on to comparing the Steelers to these other teams in the AFC that they're going to have to play this year. All right, Afton, thank you for your question. What are you happiest about from week 2 of OTAs? Okay, so OTAs, I always come with the caveat on OTAs that we're not going to find out much about this team other than that, hey, these are the guys that are here, right? And maybe a guy slimmed down, maybe a guy put on more weight. Those are the types of things we learn at OTAs. And obviously as fans, we get hyped up for this too, right? Because it's actually something football related to on the field work that we can sit back and enjoy and see some clips from and get the inside scoops from the guys who are there as much as they possibly can give us. And then from there, it's like, okay, so what do we take away from this? I'm going to say what I'm excited about from week 2, what I'm happiest about to see from week 2 of OTAs is that it looks like the Steelers have leadership on offense. It really does. I think that first off, George Pickens is going to benefit, whether that's directly, indirectly from Deontay Johnson not being there. And also right now from the fact that the Steelers have not signed a big-time wide receiver from outside the organization. He's the guy. He is the guy. And that helps, in my opinion. That helps his morale. He knows I'm the wide receiver 1 for this team. I'm the leader of this team. I got to step it up a notch. I don't have anything I can fall back on. I am him. We all want him to be him, right? He is now. So Step it up, young man. And I think he's doing that. The offensive line, these guys are built to lead. They really are. Down the road, as the young guys become veterans, it's going to be something special. I really believe that. I think that Omar Khan and company have done a great job of building that unit with quality character guys with upside physically. They're not just going one or the other. They're getting it done there. So I think leadership there. And then Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, either one of those guys, if they stepped in as the starting quarterback in week one, are an upgrade as a leader on what we had last year. There's at that point no controversy about it. There's no, okay, this guy hasn't been here and done that. We haven't seen anything from him. So what can we trust with that? Russell Wilson, you've seen it all. Justin Fields, you've seen enough to where this guy's he's a leader. And I think both of those guys are fantastic for this offense. That's what I'm happiest to see from OTAs so far this second week. Joey Porter Jr. coming out saying he's the best corner out there in his opinion. I like that confidence. It's a different vibe than Chase Claypool saying I'm going to be a top 5 wide receiver or already am a top 5 wide receiver. I think it's self-confidence from Joey. And I think that it's warranted. He played well. He was a unicorn last year at the cornerback position. He really was. As a rookie, being asked to do what he did and coming away with the stats that he did. I mean, PFF put it out the other day. Put some respect on this man's name. I love seeing that confidence from him. I like it. Okay, let's see here. Next question from Andre. Andre says, Jeremy, I believe they're slept on, but we don't know how the team's Pittsburgh plays down the stretch are going to be. Okay, so not a question. I apologize. But Andre, yes, I wanted to answer this directly because it was a direct statement to me, but I agree 100%. We don't know how it's going to turn out for these other teams. It's all projection right now. I just think that, a lot of the national conversation is based on what happened last year or what a team's getting back, right? Joey Burrow is the talk of the AFC North because he's back, he's healthy, and so the Bengals are going to be back. I'm not saying they're not. In fact, I wouldn't bet against Joe Burrow, honestly, if he's healthy. See, there's that caveat again for every team. The Ravens, AFC Championship game, they should have won it by all accounts because if they'd have just run the ball, they could have won that game. The Chiefs were doing a bunch of things to keep them from being able to run the ball. Let's just be real about that. But yeah, they did abandon the run a little bit too. So those are the guys that we're talking about. The Kansas City Chiefs, talking about the Chargers because they got Jim Harbaugh. I mean, there's a lot of talk going on out there. We'll see how these teams are down the stretch, obviously. But the Steelers are being slept on because of the consistency of Mike Tomlin and the inability of Mike Tomlin also to get over the hump in the playoffs. So I think that is kind of a two-headed sword, two-headed monster for the Steelers as I mix up my metaphors there. I think that, Mike Tomlin's consistency, the Steelers are kind of pegged in as one of those teams that, they're good. They're not moving the needle for us, but I wouldn't want to play them. And if they win 10 games, yeah, it's expected. Who cares? 12 games even. Wow. Okay. Wow. They maybe exceeded a little expectations here, but what are they going to do with it? I think that's fair. It's a fair assessment right now. So we'll see how they go. But I just think that I agree with you, Andre. They are being slept on. I hope I'm saying your name right. If I'm not, let me know. Let's see. Gene Smith. Who is scary besides Baltimore? Is Baltimore scary? That's my question. Excuse me. Is Baltimore even that scary to Pittsburgh? 7-1 in their last 8 meetings since 2020. For the Steelers, they've got a beat on this team. And some of those have been like fluky type things too, but they always go the Steelers' way. Is that going to last again this year? I don't know. I don't necessarily expect the Steelers to sweep the Ravens this year, but they don't scare the Steelers. That's for sure. Kansas City is scary because they got Patrick Mahomes. The Chargers, they're going to be scary because they've got Justin Herbert. These teams with quarterbacks, yeah, they're going to be a little scary, but everybody's got flaws that you can exploit. It just comes down to coaching execution and how these teams play it. So yeah, I don't think anybody right now in the AFC is like, and if you're talking about the top 8 or so teams in the AFC, they're all like, we're doing this. We're going to win this conference. we have just as good a shot as anybody else in this conference. It's going to be a bloodbath, but we've got a good shot just like everybody else. So that's how I kind of feel the vibe is there in that conference. So good question from McEldew. Will Highsmith get at least 10 sacks this year? If I'm betting on this, then I'm saying yes. If you give me a 9.5 over under, I'm going to take the over on that. I think he got unlucky a little bit last year with some cleanups. Obviously, TJ Watt's going to clean up a lot of sacks. So you better get to the quarterback and take him down first. But Alex Highsmith's underlying numbers, his advanced metrics are rival some of the best pass rushers in the league as far as his pass rush win rate. I know you don't like to hear that, but it is a stat, and it has some credence. I'm not saying it has enough credence to win defensive player over the year over the guy who actually finishes all those pressures. But it is still a relevant stat when determining how effective a player is at winning and doing his job. So, but yeah, I'm betting on Highsmith this year. I really am. I think he's a guy to bet on for a bounce back. Statistically, I thought he still played pretty well last year. But don't be surprised if he stays fresher, because Nick Herbig can spell him a lot more. I think that Nick Herbig's on his way to being a really good player rotationally as well. So, but yeah, I expect 10 plus sacks out of Alex Highsmith for sure. All right, let's go back. I'm going back out stars here and see if we got any more questions. Okay. Yes. Afton's got one. Let's do this one real quick. I've heard Cortland Sutton's asking price is $4 to $5 million lower than previously thought. Isn't he still too expensive for Con to hire? All the talks that I've heard is that Cortland Sutton wants a raise in Denver. So if that's the case, and I think he's making $13 million this year. I think he won $3 to $4 million raise last time I was seeing. So I don't know. I still think the Steelers are working those phones, if you will, in that regard, but I don't know if they're going to actually land anything. We'll see. But I wouldn't say he's out of their price range. They've got cap space. They can make more cap space with Cam Hayward's extension, which I expect will be done. So I wouldn't say whatever he's asking, if it's more, if it's less, I wouldn't say he's out of their price range. I just don't know if the Broncos are going to be willing to deal and take another weapon away from Bo Nix. We'll see. Let's see. Scrolling down here. Jeremiah Yoder has a comment here, so let me pull it up. Jeremy, let the so-called media experts sleep on our Pittsburgh Steelers. I feel our team plays better when they surprise everyone and they are eating their crow. I mean, there is something about a Mike Tomlin team backed into a corner. If you listen to the Around the NFL podcast, Caged Animal, I think that there is something to that. But, man, I don't know. Honestly, Jeremiah, I miss the days when the Steelers were considered one of the teams to beat in the AFC. I miss those days where everybody's talking about the Patriots. Everybody's talking about the Colts, but the next name out of their mouth was the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everybody's talking about the Patriots and the Broncos with Peyton Manning, but don't sleep on these Pittsburgh Steelers. They're incredible. They've got a great offense. Their defense is scrappy. Kind of the flip at this point. The defense is really good. And that offense is going to be scrappy. It's going to be tough. It's going to be physical. That's what I want to get back to. I like being slept on, if you will, from that regard. But at some point, you've got to play above those expectations so that you're actually winning something. So give me the underdog story for a little while. But eventually this season, I want the Steelers to be feared. I want, when the game comes up on the schedule, let's look at it. When Week 11 shows up and the Pittsburgh Steelers are lined up for a home game against the Baltimore Ravens for their first divisional matchup, I want the experts to be sitting there saying, I don't know how this Ravens team is going to go into Pittsburgh and win this game. I don't know how they're going to do it. They are too physical. They are too nasty. This defense is too good. This offense, you cannot stop this running game. You cannot stop George Pickens down the field. I want everybody out there to know how dangerous this Pittsburgh Steelers team is by the end of this thing. I want to get to Christmas Day, and they're like, this is the game that decides the first overall seed in the AFC. This is the game that shows us, can the Pittsburgh Steelers win a Super Bowl this year? That's what I want. So yeah, Jeremiah, I agree with you to a point. Let them ride that underdog's momentum, if you will. Let them be the cornered animal, but eventually that cornered caged animal's got to get out of the cage and get to the front of the pack. Let's go. Let's do it, Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, good question here from the Unmitigated Disaster. I like that one. Do you see any potential in Mims and or Callaway? I mean, we've seen Callaway do some interesting things for the New Orleans Saints a couple years ago. And we've seen, I mean, Denzel Mims got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of physical talent. He's a big dude. There's a reason he was a first-round pick, maybe second-round pick. No, I think it was a first-round pick. Sorry, getting confused. But yeah, there's a reason that he was highly touted. Let's just say that coming out of college. I mean, I see some upside in those guys, but at the same time, they haven't taken over. They haven't done what Amon-Ra St. Brown has done, which is establish himself as a top tier wide receiver, even though he was a 4th round draft pick. So I see some upside there, I guess, but what's there to unlock necessarily that hasn't already been, we'll see. Let's go down. Okay, so that's all the questions. All right, that's good stuff. Let's do this. Let's go through the schedule in the AFC. I want to compare some teams here. Okay, let's start week 2 versus the Broncos. Pittsburgh Steelers going to Denver. I think most of us would agree that the Steelers are a better roster than Denver. That's not too much in question. Going to Denver, tough job. Sean Payton's always going to coach up his team. They're going to be tough. It's early in the season, so there's going to be chinks being worked out on both sides. Kinks, excuse me. I think that it's going to be a tougher matchup than maybe it should be on paper, just because of the timing of it and everything. But the Steelers clearly better than the Denver Broncos, right? This is clearly a couple steps above the Broncos right now. The Broncos, honestly, with their quarterback situation, again, they're going to win more games than they probably should, but this is a team that should be near the bottom of the pecking order in the AFC. The LA Chargers, they're a tough team to try to figure out. On the one hand, fantastic new head coach, a culture-changing head coach, honestly. So I don't expect the Chargers to be chargering that too much longer. I really don't. I think that the stigma around the Chargers is going to change. They're going to be a good team. I don't think it's this year. They have too many holes on defense. They have they don't have a good wide receiver room. I'm not a huge Greg Roman fan. I'm sorry. I'm just not, especially with the talent at quarterback that they have. I think that's a misuse of Justin Herbert, putting him in that system. We'll see, I guess, but I just don't like that so much right now. So I'm going to say they're a year away. They need some more talent added to this team. If you look across their roster, where the Steelers are stronger in along the front, the defensive front, they have question marks there. I mean, Joey Bosa just can't stay healthy. That's just the truth of it, more so than TJ Watt. They've got a lot of questions on the secondary. I don't like their linebacker room as much. They've got too much youth there and inexperience. And then on offense, again, wide receiver room, it's down there with the Steelers as maybe the one of the more underwhelming ones outside of George Pickens, obviously. So I'm not too high on the Chargers this year, honestly. It'll be a tough game. Steelers home opener, though, I'd expect them to win that one. The Indianapolis Colts. This team has some serious upside, if you ask me. They might be the most athletic team in football for starters. And then you add in the fact that they've got a quarterback who, when he was on the field for all 2.5 games last year, looked pretty incredible. And then some of the weapons that they've added, some of the guys on defense that they've added, I think their roster is actually on their way to being in the same conversation as some of these better teams, they're just so young. It's hard to know if they're going to be that good yet. So I think that they're going to be, I think if I'm betting right now, the Colts are better than the Chargers and definitely better than the Broncos. This is the best team in the AFC that the Steelers will have faced yet. Let's skip ahead to the Raiders. Raiders are going to be, they're just going to be scrappy. I do not like this game. I really don't. Sandwiched between two Sunday night football games, Dallas and the Jets, two home games, and you got to go all the way out to Las Vegas. I don't like this game. I think the Steelers are going to lose this game. Just sitting here today knowing how our Steelers are. But anyway, Raiders, they really don't have a quarterback. I mean, they really don't. The talk is that Aiden O'Connell is going to win the starting job, and he's all right, passable, I guess, but he's a career backup that just hasn't shown enough of the fact that he's a career backup yet for them to move him to that, if you will, because he's just going into the second year. Gardner Minshew, obviously a career backup there. So I'm not worried about the Ravens quarterback situation, but that defense is going to be physical. I think their secondary is going to need some issues, but their front seven is probably just as scary as Pittsburgh's, to be honest. Max Crosby is no joke, and they've got some young guys there that are going to be really good. And then you add Christian Wilkins to that. That's tough. They're going to be able to counter what the Steelers are trying to do well, which is be brutal up front on offense. The Raiders defense going to be able to counter that really well by being just barbaric up front. I don't know how else to say it. They're going to be good. But I still think the Steelers are a class above the Raiders, okay? So the Steelers are a class above all these teams so far, and we kind of knew that in the first half of the season. This is the one, though, the New York Jets, Week 7, Sunday Night Football. These two teams are on a trajectory pretty similar. I think the defenses are really, really going to be good this year. Working on an article right now, and I think I've got both the Steelers and the Jets in my top 3 or 4 defenses for 2024 projected. The Jets are pretty scary on that side of the ball. And then the offense, if Aaron Rodgers is still healthy in Week 7, I mean, you've got to contend with a quarterback who just won back-to-back MVPs 2 and 3 years ago, or 3 and 4 years ago. And then you've got a wide receiver core led by Garrett Wilson, and now Mike Williams is there. You've got Breece Hall to contend with, and an offensive line that's going to have improved as well. Woo! They're a scary team. But I would say that right now, this is pound for pound. These are equal teams, and the Jets are getting more Super Bowl hype than the Steelers are. I mean, obviously that a lot of that has to do with Rodgers, but Russell Wilson, I'd take Rodgers, but it's a lot closer than maybe it used to be, especially when you consider the health factor. So I don't know. These teams are neck and neck to me. I don't know what you guys think. Let me know. But I think that the Steelers will have their hands full with this Jets team. These are evenly matched teams. These two teams I think should be highly thought of in the AFC. And then you get to the second half, and it's all the division opponents plus the Chiefs, right? The Ravens, Steelers and Ravens. The Ravens don't scare the Steelers. They just don't. The team I'm most scared of out of these 3 teams is Cincinnati, because under Joe Burrow, the Steelers do not have a good record against the Bengals. They just don't. The Browns have split with the Steelers the last 3 seasons and beat them in a playoff game in that time. I don't love that. So, the Browns are tough. The Ravens don't scare you. The Browns don't scare you either. The Bengals, I guess, don't scare you if you're Pittsburgh. You beat them twice last year. You beat the Browns once last year. You beat the Ravens twice last year. But outside of that, Ravens going to win a lot of games. They're going to win double-digit games. The Browns are probably going to push for double-digit games, although I think that I don't know. Until this team does it once, I can't see it happening. I just can't get there. And I'm married to a Browns fan. Yes, my daughter likes to get my goad by saying, "Go Browns, stinky Steelers." Still working on that, by the way. So don't judge me as a dad yet. I'm still working on it. I'm still working there. But Ravens, Browns, Bengals match up with the Steelers just fine. But across the league, the Bengals they're going to be tough. The Bengals are one of those teams in the AFC if Joe Burrow's healthy. This Bengals defense, though, nowhere near the caliber of the Steelers. The Browns defense is near the caliber of the Steelers. They might be the best defense in football. They're going to be one of my top 3 or 4 defenses again this year. It's just Deshaun Watson. And I'll take Russell Wilson over Deshaun Watson any day of the week right now. And I might even take the Steelers wide receiver room over the Browns. Maybe. Jerry Jeudy kind of changes things there, I think, but it's close. So all 4 of these teams match up really well with each other, I think. But I'm still not seeing a team that the Steelers shouldn't feel confident that they can go and win. I'm not seeing a team here that the Steelers should be like, okay, we're clearly underdogs here. We're clearly dogs here. Are you? I'm not seeing that. I'm just not seeing it. So maybe my black and gold colored glasses are really robbing me of my of anything objective here. But I just don't see it. Honestly, the Chiefs too. Yeah, it's Patrick Mahomes. He scares the crap out of me. Yes, he does. 6 touchdowns against the Steelers in 2018. Another 5 of them in the playoff game a couple years ago. He scares the mess out of me. He really does. I don't think they have an answer for Patrick Mahomes and what he can do. But I don't know. I'm not a fan of this wide receiver room in Kansas City. I think the defense is going to take a step back because you don't have one of the best corners in football on the back end anymore. They're going to have to really step up some of those guys. The linebacker core got a little bit of a hit. I do like Leo Chenal there. That was a guy a lot of us may be had our eyes on as Steelers fans a couple of years ago in the draft. I really like him to step up there. Chris Jones, still younger than Cam Hayward, playing out of his mind still, takes another step when the games count. This team does scare me. I wouldn't say the Steelers are here. I wouldn't say the Steelers are here yet. But this is the only team in the AFC where I would say, oh yeah, the Steelers aren't there yet. I would be surprised if they win this game. I would not pick them to win this game. But right now, coin flip with the Jets. They should beat the Raiders. I mean, they should beat the Colts. They should. Will they? I don't know. They should. Chargers, they should beat the Chargers with this roster. They should beat the Broncos, man. They should at least split with each of their division rivals, at least. And that's the AFC in a nutshell here for the Steelers. There's some other good teams that they're not going to play, the Dolphins, the Bills. But again, I don't know. Those teams have issues too. So I'm just sitting here and I'm looking at the Steelers and I think that they are being slept on. I just do. And I want to sit here and say that if I were Rich Eisen, that I would actually take a look at this team's roster and I would sit there and go, yeah, I'm a Jets fan. I think the Jets are good. But this Steelers team, they've got all the pieces. Why can't we sit here and talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers like we talk about anybody else in the AFC outside of Kansas City? Because they are the team to beat. Put them in their own little tier. Put them up there. And then everybody else should be in that same conversation. Everybody else should be in that same conversation after that. Steelers should be there. All right. I vented long enough. I ranted long enough. I appreciate you all sticking with me. 122 of you right now. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the comments. Mr. Wood, CY, Cy, Mr. Wood, Cy, Gene Smith, the unmitigated disaster. Man, I thank you all for tuning in, joining in. You guys are great. Ever since I started doing the show, you've welcomed me with open arms. You've listened to me talk about the Steelers. I'm glad you guys stick with me here. We'll have a guest on for you next week. I'm sorry I didn't do that this week. Before we go, thank you, Afton, for bringing this up. I meant to talk about this. Tony Dungy knows football. Tony Dungy was a Steeler. So I can see why some people might be like, oh, you got ties to that team. Tony Dungy knows football. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are definitely a sleeper Super Bowl team. If Russell Wilson plays anywhere close to 2020 Seattle, this is a team that can contend. They've got holes just like anybody else, but they don't have more holes than most other teams. I mean, we could really dive into it and probably get nitpicky, but if you start doing that with every team, you're going to end up with, okay, nobody's going to win. Just give it to Kansas City. So thank you, Afton, for that. I meant to mention that. Anybody sleeping on the Steelers? I think they're not going to be. When I said week 11, Steelers versus Ravens, I'm going to throw it out there right now. I think the Steelers are a 2-loss team at max come week 11. And I think that they are going to be fierce. So their losses, I'll say they lose that Raiders game, that dumb Raiders game. And then the Cowboys. Let's just do those two. You go into Baltimore and you're sitting there. You played 9 games. You're 7-2. The Ravens, I think, will be in that same conversation for record. But yeah, I'm ready for everybody to sit there and be like, okay, the Steelers just came off of a 40-16 stomping of the Commanders after their bye week. And before that, the week before that, they trounced the Giants. They beat the Jets in a close game. So their last 3 games, they're really cruising. That's what I'm hoping for. I think that they can really do it. All right, that's going to be a wrap for me. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it all. Hey, look, Steelers Nation in Australia makes it in for the final couple minutes here. Hey, Mark, how you doing, my man? I wish I could stick on a little bit longer. I've got to get going, though. I appreciate you all again. Hit that like button, subscribe, tune in wherever you get your podcast. It was such a good show. I know you're going to want to go listen to it on audio later again as well. You're going to want to tell all your friends, hey, this guy over here, this Betts guy, he knows that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be it this year. So all that being said, hope everybody has a great night. Hope everybody had a great Memorial Day this last weekend. And had a great weekend this week. I appreciate all you guys. We'll talk to you later here on the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. Till next time.